The snow fell in heavy, silent clumps, coating the world in a blanket of white. Christmas lights twinkled on the houses, their festive glow mocking the emptiness inside Claudia's heart. She sat on the cold park bench, the sting of betrayal still sharp on her chest. She had always believed that Christmas was a time for magic, for warmth, for love. But not this year, not anymore. Claudia's hands, still numb from the cold, gripped the edges of her coat tighter. She stared blankly at the snowflakes, each one unique, each one disappearing as soon as it landed. Much like her marriage, once beautiful and perfect, now crumbling before her eyes. Trent, the man she'd loved for nearly 3 decades, had just left her. It wasn't a slow fade. No, it was a swift, brutal strike, sharp enough to leave her gasping for air. "I can't do this anymore, Claudia," Trent's words echoed in her mind, his voice cold, detached. She could still feel the iciness of his stare, the way he had spoken to her like a stranger, like she was nothing. And then, just like that, he walked out, leaving her standing in the kitchen, the scent of cinnamon and fresh pie filling the space between them. He didn't even take off his coat, his shoes. He was already gone. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. He'd been unhappy for a long time. He'd fallen in love with someone else, someone younger. And here she was, frozen in the snow, unable to move forward, unable to leave the life she had known. But then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw him. A man hunched over, barefoot, stumbling through the snow. His feet were purple, raw from the cold, and Claudia's nursing instincts kicked in without hesitation. Despite the deep ache in her heart, despite feeling utterly abandoned, she couldn't ignore him. She couldn't pretend that she didn't know what it was like to suffer, even if it was in a different way. She watched him carefully, feeling a flicker of something inside her. Her boots, warm and sturdy, felt like the only thing she could give. "Are you okay?" Claudia asked, her voice almost lost in the howling wind. The man looked up, his face weathered, eyes cloudy with the cold. "Just trying to find somewhere warm," he said, his voice hoarse. He paused, noticing the concern in her eyes, but added quickly, "Shelters are full on Christmas Eve. Funny how the spirit of giving only goes so far." Claudia swallowed the lump in her throat, looking down at his feet. Frostbite. It was the first thing that came to her mind. The second was the weight of her own despair. The loneliness, the betrayal, the sense of having given everything to someone who no longer saw her. But still, she found herself untying her boots. "You need them more than I do," she said softly, her fingers fumbling with the laces. The man hesitated, his eyes flickering from her to the boots in her hands. "You don't have to." "I can't walk away from you like this," she interrupted, the words coming out more sharply than she expected. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. She wasn't walking away from this man, not when he was struggling with something that could cost him his life. She knew what it was like to feel helpless, but this was something she could change. After a moment of hesitation, he accepted the boots, his shaking hands taking them from her. She couldn't help but feel the sting of the cold on her own bare feet, but it was worth it. She had done something. For the first time in hours, she had done something that mattered. "I'm Marcus," he said quietly as he slipped her boots on. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." Claudia forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. The relief on his face, the genuine appreciation, made something inside her stir. She hadn't expected to feel this way, to find any kind of comfort in the act of giving away what little she had left. "You don't need to thank me," she said, her voice softer now. "You needed help." And for a brief, fleeting moment, Claudia did too. She needed to feel like she could do something good, something right, even when everything else in her world was wrong. She watched as Marcus shuffled away, his steps slow but steady now, his feet warm. The cold seeped into her bones as she sat there, watching him disappear into the distance. But it wasn't the numbness of her own grief that she felt. No, it was something different, something unfamiliar. Relief. The sharp, bitter feeling of grief hadn't completely faded, but it was momentarily overshadowed by the warmth of helping someone, of making a difference, even if it was just for one person in the world. She stood up from the bench, her feet still cold, but the weight in her chest had lightened just a little. Marcus had walked away, but in that brief moment, he had given her something more than warmth. He had given her purpose. And as Claudia turned to head back to the empty house that was once her home, she didn't feel the emptiness quite as strongly. There was a strange hope in the air, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. The man was gone, but the snow continued to fall, quietly, as if it too was giving her a chance to breathe. Claudia sat by the window, absent-mindedly turning the silver coin Marcus had given her over in her hand. The soft, polished metal gleamed in the dim light, its weight grounding her in a way nothing else could. She had never been the sentimental type, at least, not until now. This coin, cold in her palm but warm in its significance, was somehow more than just a simple piece of metal. It was a reminder of something she couldn't quite name, something she was only beginning to understand. Marcus, the man she'd helped on that cold Christmas Eve, the stranger who had asked for nothing but warmth, and in return she had given him her boots. She couldn't shake the image of his face, the gratitude mixed with something else, something deeper. He had said her kindness meant more than the boots. It was a moment of pure humanity, unexpected in a world where it felt like everything was falling apart. She ran her thumb over the inscription on the coin. "Kindness is the only investment that never fails." The words, simple yet profound, echoed in her mind. It was almost as if it was a message she needed to hear, especially now. Her marriage to Trent had crumbled into dust, and for the first time in years, she was questioning everything she had once believed. The life she had spent 28 years building was gone. She had been replaced, discarded. And yet, here she was, staring at this coin, wondering if it was the symbol of something new. Her mind wandered back to the Christmas Eve conversation with Trent. The harsh words still rang in her ears, his confession of love for someone younger, his abandonment of her. She had been so sure of their life together, so certain of the man she married. But all of that had been shattered in a single night. The emptiness that had taken root in her heart seemed to grow each day. She missed the small things, the comfort of Trent's presence, the way they would finish each other's sentences, the way he used to laugh at her terrible cooking. But now, with the coin in her hand, she wasn't so sure. Was this really the end? Or was it a chance to start something new? Maybe the coin was a sign, though a part of her resisted that notion. She wasn't ready to move on. She wasn't ready to let go of the life she thought she would have forever. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She froze for a moment, unsure if she wanted to answer it. But when she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. There, standing in the doorway, was Marcus, but not the same man she had met that night in the snow. Gone was the rough, unkempt appearance of the homeless man she had helped. In his place stood a man sharply dressed in an expensive, tailored suit. His gray hair was neatly combed, his posture confident, but it was his eyes, those same striking blue eyes, that gave him away. The warmth was still there, but it was now tempered with something more powerful. Claudia blinked, trying to process what was happening. "Marcus," she asked, her voice trembling, What are you doing here?" He smiled, but there was a quiet intensity behind it. "I'm sorry to show up unannounced, Maddie," he said, using the nickname she had never told him. "But I think we need to talk." Confusion swept over her. "Talk? About what?" She glanced at the silver coin in her hand, suddenly feeling the weight of it more than ever. Marcus stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his presence filling the room. He was no longer the stranger she had helped that night. He was someone else entirely. "You're probably wondering why I'm here," he began, settling into the armchair across from her, "and why I've been keeping a secret." Claudia stood frozen, the coin still clutched tightly in her palm. "What secret?" she asked, her heart racing. "I'm not just some homeless man who wandered into your life by chance," Marcus said, his voice steady but laced with meaning. "My name is Cole Wellington, and I run Wellington Industries." He paused, letting the name hang in the air, allowing Claudia to process it. Her mind spun. "Wellington Industries? You mean the billionaire?" She stammered, disbelief etched on her face. "Yes," Cole said, his voice calm, yet undeniably serious. "I've been running the company for years, and I've come to a realization. I wanted to know if there was still kindness in the world, if there was someone who would help a stranger without expecting anything in return." Claudia's thoughts were reeling, struggling to comprehend what he was saying. The man she had given her boots to, a man she thought was homeless, was one of the wealthiest people in the country. "You were testing me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cole nodded, his eyes meeting hers with an unwavering intensity. I wanted to see if you would help without question. And you did. You passed my test, Maddie. You gave me something of yours without hesitation. Something you needed, something you could have walked away from. And that's why I'm here." Claudia's heart pounded in her chest, her confusion slowly turning into realization. "What do you mean? Why you're here? What are you offering me?" "An opportunity," Cole said, his voice softening. "I want to offer you a job at my foundation, the Wellington Foundation. We're doing good work, but we need someone like you, someone who truly understands people. Someone who can connect with others not just by signing checks, but by offering real help." Claudia's mind raced as she processed his words. A job at one of the largest philanthropic organizations in the country. The offer was overwhelming. She had spent years in nursing, caring for others, but this was something completely different. A chance to make an impact on a larger scale. A chance to do something meaningful. "But why me?" she asked, her voice filled with doubt. "I'm just a retired nurse. I don't know anything about running a foundation." "I don't need someone who knows all the technicalities," Cole replied. "I need someone who understands the human side of philanthropy, someone who believes in the power of kindness. And you, Maddie, are that person." The weight of the moment settled over her. It was everything she had ever wanted, a chance to rebuild, to start over. But the fear crept in, too. Could she really do this? Could she step into this new world, leave behind the life she had known? Cole seemed to read her thoughts. "Take some time to think about it, but I believe you can do this. I wouldn't offer it to you if I didn't think you were capable." Claudia stared at him, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She had spent years feeling invisible, unsure of who she was without Trent. But now, here was an opportunity, an invitation to step into something new, something that would challenge her but also give her purpose again. "I'll do it," she said, her voice firm, surprising even herself. Cole smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "Good, we'll start soon. I believe in you, Maddie." As he left, the reality of the decision settled in. This wasn't just a job. It was a chance to rewrite her story, to find purpose again, to heal. And for the first time in months, Claudia felt a spark of hope flicker inside her. Claudia stood outside the sleek glass doors of the Wellington Foundation, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and trepidation. She had never imagined herself in a place like this, certainly not in the polished, high-rise tower that stretched into the sky above her. It seemed so foreign, so distant from the life she had known just weeks ago. The building, all steel and glass, gleamed under the winter sun, reflecting the world around it with an almost cold precision. She felt like a small fish, about to be dropped into an ocean of sharks. With a deep breath, she pushed open the door, and the scent of polished marble and fresh coffee enveloped her. The lobby was vast, a clean, minimalist design that spoke volumes about wealth without shouting. Floor to ceiling, windows allowed the daylight to pour in, casting everything in a bright, almost clinical light. It was like stepping into another world, one of luxury, power, and opportunity. The polished floors gleamed, and the air was cool and crisp, like it had been carefully curated to reflect the exact atmosphere of success. "Mrs. Hayes," a voice interrupted her reverie. Claudia looked up to see a young woman with a bright, welcoming smile. She was dressed in a tailored navy suit, her dark hair neatly tied back. "I'm Sarah, Mr. Wellington's assistant. I'll show you to your office." Claudia nodded, still feeling the weight of the newness of everything. As she followed Sarah down the sleek, glass-walled corridor, she couldn't help but notice the quiet hum of productivity all around her. People walked briskly, their faces focused, their voices barely rising above a whisper as they moved from one task to the next. The whole place hummed with a sense of purpose. They stopped in front of a door with her name on it, Maddie Hayes, Director of Community Outreach. Claudia blinked. The words seemed so foreign to her, she hadn't yet felt worthy of them. But there they were, etched in silver against the dark wood of the door. Her pulse quickened as Sarah opened the door for her. Inside, the office was just as immaculate. A sleek desk sat in the center, a glass window offering a breathtaking view of the city's skyline. Everything was modern, sharp, and pristine. It was almost too much. She had never worked in a place like this, never even imagined herself here. It felt like an entire world away from her old life in the small clinics and worn-out hospital rooms where she had spent 30 years. As she stepped inside, Sarah gestured for her to take a seat. "Everything is set up for you," she said. "Mr. Wellington wanted everything to be perfect for your first day." Claudia sat down, running her fingers over the smooth, cold surface of the desk, her mind racing. "Thank you," she said, trying to push aside the overwhelming sense of being an imposter. Just then, the door opened and Marcus walked in. He was dressed in his usual sharp suit, his presence commanding yet warm. "Maddie," he said with a smile, walking over to her. "I see you've found your office." "Thank you, Cole," she said, standing to greet him. It still felt strange calling him by his first name after everything that had happened. But there was no time for hesitation now. He was her boss. She had to get used to it. "Let's get started," he said, sitting down across from her. His eyes were sharp, but there was a kindness in them that made her feel at ease, if only slightly. "I've got a few things to go over with you. We've got big plans for the foundation, and you're going to be a key part of it." Claudia nodded, but she could feel the weight of imposter syndrome creeping up on her. She was just a retired nurse, a woman who had spent her life caring for people in hospital rooms, not managing multi-million-dollar projects. What did she know about running a foundation? "You'll be working closely with our team," Marcus continued, his tone light but serious. "But the most important thing I want you to focus on is making real connections with the people we serve. It's not just about writing checks or funding programs. It's about truly understanding what people need on a personal level. That's why I chose you for this role, Maddie. You have something that no one else does." Claudia swallowed hard, unsure whether she should be flattered or terrified. She had no experience with this kind of work, no qualifications that could even come close to the business-minded people in this building. Yet Marcus had chosen her. He believed in her. "But what if I fail?" she asked, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Marcus leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "I don't believe you will, but if you do, we'll fix it together. I'm here to support you every step of the way." Claudia felt a knot loosen in her chest. She was still uncertain, still afraid of being out of her depth, but Marcus's confidence in her, it felt like a lifeline. Later that afternoon, as the foundation's team gathered for their weekly meeting, Claudia was introduced to her colleagues. Most of them were skeptical of her background, and she could sense the tension in the room. They were used to people with MBAs, not retired nurses. But Marcus stood by her, introducing her with a sense of pride that made her feel, just for a moment, that she truly belonged here. Her first task was to meet with the team managing a new grant for local housing. It was a tough crowd, and they didn't make things easy for her. But as the meeting went on, Claudia's voice grew steadier. She drew on her nursing background, her years of listening to patients and understanding their needs. The skills she had honed in hospitals were surprisingly transferable here: listening, empathizing, problem-solving. She could do this. The breakthrough moment came when she suggested a community survey, a way to directly engage with the people the foundation's grants were meant to help. "We need to talk to the residents," she said. "We can't assume what they need. We have to ask them. It's the only way to ensure our resources are going where they're truly needed." The room went silent for a moment, but then someone spoke up. "That's actually a good idea," one of the team members said, looking at her with newfound respect. Slowly, the others nodded, and the tension in the room began to dissipate. As the meeting ended, Marcus pulled Claudia aside. "Well done," he said. "I think you've found your footing." For the first time since stepping into the building, Claudia felt a flicker of something. Hope. It was a small thing, but it was enough. She hadn't just survived this day, she had made a difference. Later that evening, Marcus invited her to dinner at a small, cozy restaurant in the city. Over a glass of wine, he opened up about his wife, Elizabeth, and the legacy she had left behind. "She believed in giving back," he said, his voice softening. "She always said that true philanthropy isn't just about giving money, it's about giving your time, your attention, your heart." Claudia listened intently, realizing that her role here wasn't just a job. It was a way to honor that legacy, to build something that would last far beyond her own life. By the end of the evening, as they said their goodbyes, Marcus looked at her with a steady, encouraging gaze. "I believe in you, Maddie. You've got this." Claudia stood outside the restaurant, her breath clouding in the cold night air. For the first time in months, she felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. And for the first time in a long time, she had a future to look forward to. Claudia sat hunched over a mountain of nonprofit management books and spreadsheets, the walls of her new office feeling like they were closing in. The bright city skyline outside her window seemed a million miles away from the chaos on her desk. She had been given her first major assignment at the Wellington Foundation, revamping the community outreach program. On paper, it was exactly the kind of challenge she had dreamed of, but in reality, it felt like she was drowning. The technical jargon of grant management, funding strategies, and outreach metrics seemed so foreign to her. She was used to listening to patients, stories, diagnosing their problems, and offering comfort. But this was a different kind of healing, one that involved navigating budgets, proposals, and strategies she had never learned. Her frustration mounted as she flipped through the thick manuals on nonprofit regulations, trying to absorb as much as she could. "Why didn't I take a business class?" she muttered under her breath, running a hand through her hair. "I'm just a nurse. What do I know about any of this?" But then a knock on her door interrupted her self-doubt. Marcus stood in the doorway, his presence grounding. He flashed a warm smile as he entered, closing the door behind him. "How's the first project going?" he asked, his voice gentle but curious. Claudia leaned back in her chair, staring at the pile of papers on her desk. "Honestly, it's overwhelming. I feel like I'm way out of my depth here. I thought I'd be using my experience in healthcare to make a difference, but none of this feels like it's in my wheelhouse." Marcus raised an eyebrow, walking over to the desk and placing a hand on the stack of papers. "It's not about the details of the spreadsheets, Maddie. It's about connecting with people. You've spent years listening to people, helping them through their toughest moments. That's what we need in the community outreach program." Claudia blinked, surprised by his words. "I've never thought about it that way," she said softly. Marcus smiled knowingly. "That's your strength. People don't just need money or resources, they need someone who understands them. That's where you come in. Use what you know. Start with the people. Get to know them, listen to them. You can't just sit here in an office and expect to change things. You have to go where the need is." His words stayed with her long after he left her office. Maybe he was right. Maybe her nursing background, her ability to listen and connect with people, was more valuable than she realized. Still, she had to push past her own doubts and fear. But where to begin? The next morning, Marcus arranged a series of field trips for Claudia, a chance to get out of the office and into the communities they served. The first stop was an inner-city elementary school, a place where kids who didn't have enough were being given the opportunity to learn. The moment she stepped into the school, the noise hit her. Children's voices filled the air, their laughter and chatter bouncing off the walls. The hallways were decorated with bright artwork, and posters hung that encouraged the kids to dream big. But beneath the surface, there was a palpable sense of need. The school had very little funding, and the classrooms were overcrowded. Teachers did what they could with what they had, but it wasn't enough. As she walked through the halls, Claudia noticed the signs of struggle. The peeling paint on the walls, the outdated textbooks, the lack of technology. Yet there was something undeniable in the energy of the place. These children, despite their circumstances, had hope. They had dreams, and they believed that, with the right support, they could achieve them. Claudia was introduced to Mrs. Hawkins, a fifth-grade teacher who had been working at the school for over 20 years. As they walked through the classrooms, Mrs. Hawkins explained how the school had struggled with budget cuts year after year. "We do our best with what we have," she said, her voice tinged with both pride and frustration. "But it's hard when there's so much more we need to give these kids." Claudia listened intently, her heart swelling with empathy. She could see the need, see it clearly in the faces of the children who were learning in rooms that weren't designed to nurture their potential. But there was something else too, hope. She had seen it in the smiles of the kids, in their eagerness to learn, in the teachers' dedication. Next, they visited a homeless shelter. The contrast was stark. The shelter was warm and welcoming, but it was crowded, and the resources were stretched thin. Claudia spoke with several people who were staying there, hearing their stories of loss, hardship, and survival. She was struck by their resilience. One woman in her late 40s told Claudia about how she had lost her job and her home after a long illness. "I just need a break," she said quietly. "Just one chance to get back on my feet." Claudia could feel the weight of her words, the deep longing for something, anything, that could help them rebuild their lives. The shelter offered food, safety, and a place to sleep, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to change their lives permanently. What these people needed was more than temporary support. They needed real, lasting opportunities. Finally, they visited a community center in a neighborhood plagued by poverty. The building was old and worn, but inside it was a hub of activity. There were people learning new skills, attending job readiness workshops, and working together to build a better future. The center was a beacon of hope in a place that had little. Claudia could feel the energy in the room. It was palpable. People were here not just for the classes, but for the sense of community. It was a place where they weren't judged, where they could take the first steps toward rebuilding their lives. It was the kind of place that Claudia wanted to see more of. She could feel her passion stirring, a fire igniting within her. This was why she was here. This was the work that mattered. By the end of the day, Claudia was exhausted but exhilarated. She had seen firsthand the impact of the foundation's work, but more importantly, she had seen where it was falling short. These people weren't looking for charity. They weren't looking for handouts. They were looking for opportunities. They were looking for the tools to help themselves. As she sat down with Marcus later that evening, she couldn't hold back her thoughts. We need to do more than just provide funding. We need to be hands-on to be part of these communities. We need to build relationships, get involved with these people's lives. It's not just about money, it's about creating real, sustainable change. Marcus listened quietly, his gaze intense. "I couldn't agree more," he said. "You've got it, Maddie. This is the vision I've been trying to find. We can do more. We can make these connections last." That night, as she sat alone in her office, Claudia reflected on everything she had seen. The need was overwhelming, but so was the potential. She could make a difference. She could help shape a new vision, one where philanthropy wasn't just about giving, but about connecting, building, and growing alongside the people they aimed to help. For the first time since she had walked into this building, Claudia felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. She wasn't just filling a role, she was creating something meaningful. This was just the beginning. It was just after lunch when Claudia's world tilted on its axis once again. The elevator doors opened, and there, standing in the gleaming lobby of the Wellington Foundation, was Trent. Claudia froze, her heart skipping a beat before dropping like a stone in her chest. She hadn't seen him in weeks, not since that cold Christmas Eve when he'd walked out. His sudden appearance, here in this place, was a shock to her system. Trent stood in the doorway, wearing the same expensive suit he always did, but something about his posture was different. He looked unsettled. His eyes were wide, scanning the polished marble floors and modern art lining the walls as if he had stumbled into an alien world. Claudia's breath caught in her throat. She had spent so many nights imagining how she would react if he ever came back, begging for forgiveness. But now that he was here, all she could feel was the pulse of anger and betrayal that had been simmering inside her since the day he left. "Claudia," Trent's voice, tentative, broke through the tension. She stiffened and forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ethan!" The use of his real name was deliberate. There was no room for the familiar nicknames they once shared. He took a hesitant step forward, his eyes scanning her face. "I didn't think I'd find you here," he said, his tone more disbelieving than accusatory. He was clearly caught off guard by the transformation in her. He hadn't expected to see her standing in this polished building in this role. The sight of her, strong and poised, hit him harder than he cared to admit. Claudia stepped back, her heels clicking against the floor as she crossed her arms in front of her. "What are you doing here, Ethan?" she asked, her voice steady but cool. He hesitated, his words stumbling over themselves. I wanted to see you. I wanted to talk. Claudia's gaze hardened. She could feel the years of resentment boiling up inside her, but she kept it in check, just barely. We've talked enough, haven't we? You left me. You made your choice. Claudia, please, Trent pleaded, his voice breaking with desperation. You don't understand. I was lost. I made a huge mistake. What we had, it was everything to me, and I threw it all away. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to try. I want us to be together again. His words, those same hollow promises, hit her like a slap in the face. But this time, it didn't sting. It felt empty, just like their marriage had been for years. The realization that he still didn't truly understand who she was now, who she had become, gnawed at her. The old Claudia would have begged, would have crumbled at the sight of his tears, but not anymore. You want to be together again, she repeated, her voice low and even. You're not the same person I married, and I'm not the same woman you left behind. I've changed. I've had to change. Trent looked at her, his brow furrowed in confusion. I know I hurt you, Claudia, but No, she cut him off sharply. You never truly saw me. You saw a wife, someone who took care of you, of the house, of everything. But you never saw me, Ethan. The real me. The woman I was underneath the good wife role you wanted me to play. His eyes flickered with something between guilt and frustration. You know that's not true. I always cared about you. I always loved you. Claudia shook her head, the anger now bubbling to the surface. You loved the idea of me, she said, her voice gaining strength. You loved the woman who was always there, who never asked for anything, who just took care of you and put your needs first. But you never saw me as more than that. You never saw the person I could be, outside of the life you wanted me to live. Trent's face twisted with disbelief. That's not fair, Claudia. I'm not finished, she interrupted, her voice firm now. She took a step closer to him, the space between them shrinking. You made me feel small, Ethan. You made me feel invisible. You took me for granted for years, and now you think you can come back and fix everything. That's not how this works. The room felt suffocating, the weight of their history pressing in on her, but she didn't step back. She stood her ground, staring him down with a strength she hadn't known she possessed just a few months ago. You never once asked me what I wanted, what I needed, she continued, her voice breaking through the years of silence between them. You never saw how unhappy I was. You just assumed I'd always be here waiting for you, but I'm not anymore. Trent's eyes searched hers, desperately trying to find the woman he thought he knew. But he didn't. He couldn't. She wasn't that woman anymore. Claudia, his voice faltered. No, she said firmly, cutting him off once again. I'm done. I'm done pretending. I'm done putting everyone else's needs before my own. I'm done with you. For a moment, there was silence. The only sound was the hum of the office building around them. Trent opened his mouth to protest, but the words didn't come. His shoulders sagged, the fight leaving him. For the first time, Claudia realized he wasn't fighting for her. He was fighting to get back the life he had lost, not the woman who had made it worth living. I'm sorry, but you can't have me back, she said quietly, her voice calm but resolute. Not like this, not after everything you've done. She watched as his face crumpled, the weight of her words sinking in. For the first time in years, Claudia felt no guilt, no regret. She had made the right choice. Trent stood there, staring at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and sorrow. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Slowly, he turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy, his retreat as final as her decision. Claudia stood in the quiet office, the finality of the moment settling over her. She didn't feel relief. She didn't feel anger. She just felt free. She had faced the past, confronted her pain, and walked away from it. She had chosen herself. As she walked back to her office, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from Marcus. You did well today. Proud of you. Let's talk later. Claudia smiled softly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't looking back. She was looking forward. And for the first time in years, she was finally living for herself. The Wellington Foundation had never been the same since Claudia's approach to community outreach began to take root. Her vision, one based on personal connections and real, lasting impact, was beginning to change the way they worked. Claudia's efforts, which had once seemed like small steps, were now snowballing into success stories. She had worked closely with local organizations, schools, and shelters, turning the focus away from just handing out grants and instead building lasting relationships. There were countless success stories, but a few stuck with her. The young woman in the job training program who had landed her first full-time job after years of struggling to find stability. The homeless veteran who had secured permanent housing through the shelter program, and the small community garden project that had become a thriving food source for a local food bank. Each of these success stories was a testament to Claudia's approach. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't even just about resources. It was about people, about giving them the tools, the support, and the belief that they could change their own lives. Claudia had helped to create programs where the foundation wasn't just a benefactor but a partner, a guide, not a savior. She could see the change in the faces of the people she worked with, the way their eyes lit up when they spoke of their progress, the way they started to believe that something better was within reach. She had never felt more fulfilled in her life, and it was more than just the success of the programs. It was the connections she had formed, the relationships that had been built, the trust that had been earned. Her colleagues at the foundation were beginning to see the results of her unique approach as well. At first, they had been skeptical, dismissing her as an outsider with little experience in nonprofit management. But now, they were coming around. Slowly, the team was beginning to recognize the value of Claudia's insights. They saw the results in the communities they served, and they saw the way she connected with people, not just as a program manager, but as someone who genuinely cared. "Your approach is working," Avery Brooks, one of the foundation's senior project managers, said to her one morning in the office. "I'm starting to see what you meant about focusing on the people, not just the project." Claudia smiled, grateful for the acknowledgement. "It's not just the people, Avery. It's about understanding their stories. It's about seeing them as more than just recipients of a grant. It's about partnership, not charity." The support from her colleagues had grown as well. Sarah, the assistant who had once treated her as an outsider, was now asking for Claudia's input on new proposals. Other team members were collaborating with her more, valuing her perspective on the direction the foundation should take. It was a slow but steady shift, one that made Claudia feel like she truly belonged. Through it all, Marcus had been by her side, offering continued mentorship and praise. It wasn't just that he was a supportive boss, he was a partner. He saw in Claudia the same qualities that made him a successful leader: the ability to connect, the vision to see beyond the obvious, and the strength to push for what was right. "You're doing exceptional work, Maddie," Marcus told her one afternoon, as they sat in his office reviewing the latest quarterly results. "You're making a real impact. I want you to take on more responsibility. We need you to lead the new initiative in the next quarter." Claudia's heart skipped a beat. More responsibility? She had only just begun to find her footing. But when she looked at Marcus, there was no hesitation in his eyes. He believed in her. And for the first time, Claudia believed in herself, too. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady. She was ready. She had faced the worst, and now, with the team she had helped shape, she was ready to take on whatever came next. But just as things were beginning to settle into a rhythm, a storm hit. The foundation's board of directors, seeing the growing success of the outreach programs, decided to allocate funds differently. There was a new initiative they wanted to fund, a large-scale project that would take up most of the foundation's budget for the year. Claudia was devastated when she heard the news. She had worked so hard to build the personal connections that were at the heart of the community outreach program, and now, everything was at risk. The new project was important, but it didn't align with the foundation's core values. It was more about high-profile visibility than about real, sustainable change. She called an emergency meeting with Marcus and the board, her mind racing. This was her test. The foundation was at a crossroads, and if she didn't stand up for what she believed in, everything she had worked for would be undone. Standing before the board, Claudia spoke with a quiet but unwavering strength. "I understand the importance of this new project. she began, her voice steady. "But if we're going to build a future for these communities, we can't just throw money at problems. We need to invest in people. We need to build relationships, provide resources that last, and give people the dignity and respect they deserve. That's what we've been doing, and it's working." The room was silent. She could feel the tension, the skepticism, but she didn't back down. "I know it's not always glamorous," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "But we're making real change, one person at a time. That's what the foundation stands for. We can't lose sight of that." After a tense pause, Marcus spoke up, his voice firm. "Claudia's right. The reason we've seen success is because of the way we've approached these communities. It's not about big gestures, it's about lasting impact, and I'm not willing to abandon that." There was a long silence before the board members started nodding, slowly at first, then more confidently. It wasn't an easy decision, but they eventually voted to reallocate some of the funding back to the community outreach programs, ensuring that the foundation's mission would remain intact. Claudia left the meeting feeling like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She had fought for what she believed in, and the foundation had listened. This wasn't just about career success, it was about making a real difference. It was about leaving a legacy. That evening, as she sat in her office looking out over the city, Claudia realized something. She wasn't just building a career here. She was building a legacy. Her work wasn't about titles or recognition. It was about creating something that would outlast her. It was about giving people the opportunity to build their own futures. For the first time in her life, Claudia felt certain of her purpose. She wasn't just a nurse anymore. She was a leader, and this was just the beginning. The air was thick with anticipation. The grand opening of the Second Chances Community Center was finally here, and the entire neighborhood seemed to be buzzing with excitement. Claudia stood in the middle of the bustling courtyard, watching the volunteers set up the final touches. Colorful balloons were being tied to fence posts, banners reading, "A new beginning starts here," hung proudly from every corner, and the scent of fresh paint still lingered in the air, a reminder of the long hours spent making this dream a reality. The community had come together in ways Claudia hadn't fully expected. Neighbors who had never spoken before were chatting excitedly about the programs the center would offer. Children ran around, their laughter echoing through the streets, while adults mingled, eagerly discussing the upcoming services. Job training, childcare, addiction counseling, educational programs, this place was more than just a building. It was a lifeline. Claudia smiled as she surveyed the scene. This was it. This was the moment she had been working toward for months, if not years. The Second Chances Community Center wasn't just a place. It was a symbol, a place of hope, of opportunity, of change. As she walked toward the stage where the ribbon-cutting ceremony would take place, she caught sight of the volunteers, people from all walks of life, coming together to make this happen. She had seen these people in action, tirelessly working alongside her, and now they were all here, ready to celebrate what they had built together. "Claudia, over here." She turned and saw Lily Rivers, the director of the community center, waving excitedly from the stage. Lily had been Claudia's right hand throughout the project. They had become close friends, bonded by their shared commitment to making a difference. "Are you ready for this?" Lily asked, her voice full of energy. Claudia laughed, feeling a small pang of nerves in her stomach. "As ready as I'll ever be." Lily grinned. "You've earned this. This is your moment." Claudia nodded, her eyes scanning the crowd. The community was here. The volunteers were here. And Marcus was here, standing just off to the side, watching her with a proud smile. As she stepped up to the podium, the crowd fell silent. It was time. Claudia took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. The speech she had prepared suddenly felt too formal, too rehearsed. She didn't need notes for this moment. She just needed to speak from her heart. "I stand here today in awe of what we've accomplished," Claudia began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This center is more than just a building. It's a place for second chances. It's a place where people can come to heal, to learn, to grow. It's a place where we believe in the power of community." Her eyes swept over the crowd, catching the faces of people who had been a part of this journey. people who had supported her, worked alongside her, and trusted in her vision. The faces of those who had seen her for who she truly was, not just as someone's wife or a retired nurse, but as a leader in her own right. "I didn't always know I was capable of this," she continued, her voice softening. "For a long time, I didn't even know who I was. I thought I was someone defined by the roles I played in other people's lives. But over the past few months, I've come to realize that I am so much more than what I thought I was. This center is proof of that. It's proof that we can all rebuild, no matter where we've come from, no matter the challenges we've faced." She paused, letting her words sink in. This wasn't just a speech, it was a declaration. A declaration of who she had become and who she was still becoming. "I want to thank each and every one of you who believed in this dream," Claudia said, her voice cracking slightly with emotion. "Without your support, none of this would be possible. This is your victory, too, and I promise you this is just the beginning." The crowd erupted into applause, and for a moment Claudia closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. It was a moment of validation, a moment of triumph. She had done it. They had all done it. As the applause faded, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Marcus standing beside her, a soft smile on his face. "You were incredible," he said, his voice low but filled with admiration. "I knew you had it in you, but seeing you here, in this moment, it's more than I ever could have hoped for." Claudia's heart swelled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Marcus. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You gave me a chance when I needed it most." Marcus shook his head, his smile widening. "No, Maddie, you gave yourself a chance. You made this happen. I'm proud of you, and I think this community is too." Claudia turned her gaze back to the crowd, where people were already beginning to gather in groups, discussing the programs and services that the center would provide. She saw parents talking to counselors, teens signing up for job training programs, and children playing in the new playground. This was what she had dreamed of. This was the future she had worked so hard to create. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was a blur of smiles, cheers, and photographs. But as Claudia stood there, watching the community pour into the center, she felt something settle inside her, something she hadn't felt in years: peace. This was more than a job. This was her legacy, and she had only just begun. As the day turned to evening and the last of the visitors filtered out, Claudia found herself alone in the courtyard, staring up at the building. The light from the street lamps cast a soft glow over the entrance, and she could almost hear the echoes of laughter and conversation in the air. She wasn't just building a career. She was building something that would last, something that would change lives. And for the first time in a long time, Claudia knew that she had found her place in the world. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, ready for whatever came next. The evening air was cool but inviting, carrying the quiet hum of the city beyond the foundation's glass windows. Claudia stood by the open balcony door of her office, looking out at the skyline. The city had always seemed distant, a place she only dreamt of being a part of. Now, as she took in her view, everything felt different. It felt like hers, like she had finally found her place in it. A soft knock on the door broke her quiet reverie. She turned to see Marcus standing there, a warm smile on his face, his presence filling the room. He always had a way of making her feel centered, calm, like nothing was out of reach. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, stepping inside. "Not at all," Claudia replied, gesturing toward the chair next to her desk. "I was just thinking about how far we've come, about everything that's happened in the past year." Marcus sat down beside her, his gaze lingering on the same view she had been lost in moments before. "It's been quite a journey," he said, his voice soft but filled with an unmistakable warmth. "I think about how we started, how you started, and look at you now." Claudia smiled, but it was a smile tinged with a quiet wonder, one she hadn't let herself feel before. "It still feels surreal, you know? Sometimes I wonder how I got here, but then I think about all the steps I had to take to get here, all the people who have been part of this journey, and I realize I didn't get here alone." Marcus reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "You never had to, Maddie. You've had the support of a lot of people, but the biggest thing you've had is yourself, your strength, your heart." Claudia squeezed his hand, feeling something shift inside her, something solidifying. And you, I never could have done this without you, Marcus. You saw me for who I really was, even when I didn't see it myself. You believed in me. He leaned in a little closer, his voice turning more intimate. I've always believed in you, and that belief has only grown stronger over time. Watching you take control of your life, watching you make this foundation something real, it's been nothing short of inspiring. A quiet pause lingered between them, filled with the unspoken connection they shared. Claudia could feel the years of doubt and fear melting away, replaced by something so much more powerful. The clarity that she wasn't just reinventing herself for the sake of survival, but for something bigger, something beautiful. I've been thinking a lot about what comes next, Claudia said, her voice barely above a whisper, as if the weight of the moment demanded softness. About what we're building, both here and together. Marcus's eyes softened, his gaze never leaving hers. And what have you come up with? I think, she began, her words flowing more freely now, I think I'm finally ready to stop looking back. I spent so many years tethered to my past, to a life that was never really mine. But now I feel like I'm stepping into something that's truly mine. I feel free for the first time in a long time. Marcus reached over and gently brushed a lock of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering. You are free, Maddie. You've always been, even when you didn't realize it. And I'm grateful I get to be part of this chapter with you, with everything you've built here, with the foundation with us. Claudia's heart fluttered, something warm blooming in her chest. She hadn't realized how much she needed this, needed him, until now. It was more than just a partnership in work, it was a partnership in life. She had grown so much, not just in her career, but in her heart. With a deep breath, she turned to face him more fully. There's something I've been meaning to ask you, something that's been on my mind for a while. Marcus raised an eyebrow, his expression a mix of curiosity and affection. What is it? Claudia hesitated for a moment, her mind racing. Then, as if the world had finally lined up perfectly, she said, Marcus, what do you see for the future? For us? You've been such a huge part of my transformation, and I can't help but think, maybe there's more to our story than just work. A smile tugged at Marcus's lips, and he stood, walking over to where Claudia stood. He took her hand in both of his, gently pulling her into his arms. I've been thinking the same thing, he said, his voice low but steady. He paused, looking down at her with such warmth and certainty that it took Claudia's breath away. And then, he reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box. Her heart skipped a beat as he knelt down before her, holding out the box. Maddie, I've watched you grow into someone extraordinary, and I know that together, we can continue to build something even greater. Not just for the foundation, but for us, for our future. He opened the box, revealing a delicate silver ring with a small diamond, a symbol of commitment, of the new chapter they were about to embark on together. Claudia's eyes filled with tears as Marcus's voice cracked slightly, the vulnerability in his tone striking her heart. Will you marry me, Maddie? Will you take this journey with me, not just as colleagues, but as partners in life? Claudia's breath caught in her throat. In that moment, she realized that her past no longer defined her. The pain, the heartbreak, the fear, they had all been necessary steps to get here. And now, here was Marcus, offering her the most beautiful future she could imagine. Yes, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, I will. Marcus's face broke into a radiant smile, and he gently slid the ring onto her finger, his hand warm and steady as he cupped her face. They stood there for a moment, lost in each other's eyes, the world outside fading into nothingness. It was just the two of them, standing on the precipice of everything they would build together. For the first time in years, Claudia felt complete. This wasn't just a partnership of work, it was a partnership in life. And together, they would continue to build a legacy of love, purpose, and community. As the evening drew to a close, Claudia looked out at the city lights once more, her heart filled with gratitude. Her journey had led her here, to a place of freedom, love, and a future that she could finally claim as her own. And with Marcus by her side, she knew this was only the beginning. The days following Marcus's proposal felt like a whirlwind for Claudia. She was still adjusting to the idea of being not just a director at the Wellington Foundation, but also a partner in a life she had once thought was beyond her reach. The engagement ring, now resting comfortably on her finger, was a constant reminder of the future they were building together, a future that felt as uncharted as the community outreach programs she had once felt so unsure about. But now, with Marcus at her side, there was a new confidence in her every step. The blending of their personal and professional lives hadn't been easy. In the beginning, Claudia had been nervous about the possibility of being seen as just Marcus's partner, whether in business or in life. It felt daunting to know that she was now connected to one of the most powerful men in the city. But Marcus had made it clear from the start that they were equals in this journey, both in love and in their shared mission. Their love wasn't just about grand gestures or romantic moments. It was about understanding, about trust, and about mutual respect. As they spent more time together, Claudia found herself learning just as much from Marcus as she had hoped. It wasn't just about the foundation anymore. It was about their shared future. In meetings, Marcus still played the role of mentor and guide, but he never overshadowed her. In fact, he encouraged her to speak her mind more, take leadership in meetings, and assert herself even more in their professional life. His support wasn't just for show. It was real, and it gave her the confidence she needed to assert herself not just as a director, but as a partner in their shared dream. Weeks after their engagement, Claudia found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving, building the life she had always wanted, alongside a man who not only believed in her but actively worked to elevate her. The relationship had grown into something deeper than either of them had expected. It wasn't perfect, but they were both learning and growing, each day bringing them closer to the life they envisioned together. But it wasn't just the personal aspect of their relationship that brought Claudia joy. It was also the success they were achieving in their work. The Second Chances Community Center had been a turning point for the foundation. The programs they had implemented were showing tangible results. More people were finding stable employment. Families were able to access the childcare services that had once been out of reach. The impact of their work was being felt in real, measurable ways, and Claudia felt an overwhelming sense of pride. Yet, as with every growth story, there were challenges. Not all the board members agreed with the direction the foundation was headed. A few wanted to revert to the old ways of doing things, focused on high-profile donations and flashy, large-scale projects that lacked real, lasting impact. The arguments were often heated, and Claudia found herself in the middle of many of them. One afternoon, after a particularly tense board meeting, Claudia and Marcus sat down at their favorite cafe, a small, quiet spot by the river. The sun was just beginning to set, casting an orange glow over the water. "Do you ever feel like we're swimming against the tide?" Claudia asked, her voice tinged with frustration. She had spent the past hour defending their approach to community outreach, but the tension in the room had been palpable. She was tired of explaining, of justifying, of fighting to make people see what they had built. Marcus reached across the table and gently took her hand. "Yes," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "But we're making progress, Maddie. You've already changed the conversation. You've made people see that this isn't about just throwing money at problems. It's about real relationships, real solutions. We're building something different, and that takes time." Claudia smiled, grateful for his unwavering belief in their work. "I know," she said, her heart lightening. "But sometimes it feels like there's so much more to do, so much more to prove." "You don't need to prove anything to anyone," Marcus said, his voice low but filled with conviction. "Not anymore. You've already proven everything you need to. This foundation, this community we're building, it's proof of who you are. You're changing lives, Maddie. Don't ever forget that." Claudia squeezed his hand, her heart full of gratitude. He was right. She didn't need to prove herself anymore. She was exactly where she needed to be. As they sat in silence for a moment, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Claudia realized something. She had spent so many years feeling like she had to be someone else, like she had to shrink herself to fit into the life that had been dictated to her. But now she was free. Free to be herself, free to build the life she wanted, and free to love without fear. In that quiet moment, a sense of peace settled over her. She had found her place. And it wasn't just in her work at the foundation or in her relationship with Marcus. It was in herself, in the person she had become. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time she wasn't afraid. She was ready to face whatever came next, both in her career and in her life with Marcus. Together, they would continue to build something meaningful, something lasting, a legacy of love, of growth, and of second chances. As they stood to leave, Marcus slipped his arm around her shoulders. "So," he said with a grin, "how about we take this one step further? Let's start planning our wedding. No more waiting." Claudia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in ages. "I think that sounds like the perfect next step," she said, looking up at him with a smile that mirrored his own. With that, they walked out into the evening, hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held. Together.